Welcome back. Now, in today's session, we will look into the various methods in which we can protect the confidential information, and we will be also taking up a real life fraud case that would definitely throw more light on the topic. But for the time being, let's start from the scratch, the sources of information. Now, the company gets information from internal and external sources. Now, the internal sources is mainly the accounting records, the timesheets, etc. That is the books of accounts and whatever records are maintained in-house. That is the internal source of information. Now coming to the external sources of information. They get information from suppliers regarding the product prices, from customers regarding the product requirements, from the business inquiry agents, mainly information relating to competitors, market analysis, etc. And definitely from the internet. Any relevant information can be gathered from the internet. Now, whatever information has been gathered should be good information. Only then can we use that information for effective decision making. So let's look into the characteristics of good information. Now, all these points are self-explanatory, except for one point which requires a bit of explanation. Cost effective. What do you mean by cost effective? It means that the benefit that we get out of this information should always be greater than the cost of getting that information. Now, this rule applies not only to existing information, but also when we implement any new information system. So as I said, the cost-benefit analysis should be applied not only for existing information, it should be applied whenever we are implementing a new information system. Now coming to the cost side of any new information system, definitely there is the initial cost, that is we need to purchase the hardware and the software, that is the one-time cost. And then there is a running cost, which includes the labor cost. What do you mean by labor cost? We need people to key in this information, to process the information, and to get the output. So definitely labor cost is involved there. And we need the IT support staff also. So all of this and any other expenses for running the information system is grouped under the head running cost. Now there are certain indirect costs of getting the information. That is mainly the training cost. Why is training cost considered an indirect cost? Because when the employees are getting trained, we are not getting any information. That is why it is termed as an indirect cost of getting information. Likewise, loss of staff morale. Now, whenever there is any change of information system, maybe it will affect the staff morale. Maybe some of their work is getting automated. So staff might get scared whether we will lose our job in future. Another indirect cost is the lost sales due to disruption. Now, whenever we are implementing a new information system, the operations of the organization will have to be halted. If not halted, at least it will go in a slow pace because of the shift to the new system. So that is the point mentioned here, lost sales due to disruption. Now coming to the benefits. Any reduction in cost or increase in revenue due to the implementation of the new system can be termed as a benefit. So whenever you're given a question relating to the implementation of a new information system, always compare the benefits and the cost. Only if the benefit is greater than the cost, the new information system should be implemented. Now let's look into the various networks through which the information flow takes place. So we will first start with LAN or local area network. Now LAN is a computer network that spans a small area. Let's take a look at the network. So here we have got two desktop computers, a server and a printer, and these are connected by way of cables to a device called the switch. Now the function of a switch is to forward the data between the devices. Say if computer 1 wants to print a document, then the data flows from computer 1 to the switch, and it is the switch which forwards the data to the printer. Likewise, if computer 2 wants to access any information from the server, then information flows from the server to the switch, and it is a switch which forwards it to the respective computer, that is computer 2. So basically, it is a switch which regulates the data flow within the LAN. Now, if you see here, all these devices are connected to the switch by way of cables. So does that mean that in a LAN, there is no wireless network? Absolutely not. For wireless connectivity, you need a device called the wireless access point. Now, this wireless access point is connected to the switch. And then say if you have got laptops, it needn't be connected to the switch by way of cables. The data flow takes place by means of radio waves. So basically, there is no physical connection that is required if there is a wireless access point. So it can be a wired or a wireless network. Now let's move on to the next network. So the next network that we are going to study is a WAN or the wide area network. And that is a computer network that connects multiple LANs. So here there are multiple LANs and we need to establish a communication network between these LANs. For this, a router is required. Now each router has got a unique IP address. Now the function of a router is similar to that of a courier agency. What does a courier agency do? It forwards parcel from one address to another. That is exactly what a router is doing. A router also transfers data packets from one IP address to another IP address. So a router basically looks into the destination IP address and it finds the best route so that the data packet will arrive at the destination IP address. Now we all know that internet is the largest WAN. Now, in this picture, let me just zoom in this picture. Now, in this case, what did I explain? There was a router which manages the traffic between the networks. And there is a switch which manages the data flows within the LAN or within the internal network. But nowadays, the functions of all these three, that is a router, the switch, the wireless access point, everything is integrated into one device. And this is known as the integrated wireless router. Now, if you see here, you have got only one device here. That is because it has got the functions of all the three. It has the functions of the router, the wireless access point, and also the switch. So that's it about the wide area network or the WAN. Now let's move on to the next network. Now the next network is the intranet. Now intranet is the internal network of an organization that allows company information to be shared among employees. Now all local area network or LAN is an intranet because it spans only a small area, which means that LAN belongs to only a single organization. Now, there could be cases where the organization has got multiple branches in various locations. So definitely LAN cannot be applied. So what is the solution? We have to go in for the WAN or the wide area network. So intranet can be LAN if the organization is situated in a single location, and it could be WAN if the organization has got branches in multiple locations. Let's take an example of a bank which has got branches in multiple locations. So definitely for the intranet, LAN cannot be adopted. We have to go in for the WAN. But there is a small problem. This wide area network is not as safe as LAN because there could be attack from hackers, viruses, etc. So how can the intranet of an organization be protected from such attacks? This is what we are going to see. And the first method of protecting is employee access controls, which means that you cannot just directly log on to the intranet of any organization. You can log in only through your user ID and password, and this is available only for the employees. or through biometric authentication, that is by way of fingerprint or by facial recognition. So that is the first control that can be employed in an intranet. Now, the second control is data encryption. What do you mean by data encryption? It is a method of scrambling the data in a message or file so that it is unintelligible unless it is decrypted. So whenever a data transmission takes place, the data is encrypted or it is scrambled, which means that any person who is intercepting the data will not understand what it means unless he has got the decryption key. So that is the second method which is employed. And another method is the firewall. Now, what do you mean by firewall? Firewall is a network security system which is based on predetermined security rules that acts as a barrier between an internal network and the public network or the internet to protect from potential cyber threats. Now, what does this mean? I will give you a very simple illustration so that you will understand what firewall exactly means. Now, just imagine the time when you were very small and say your parents had to go for an urgent meeting and you are left home alone. So you have been instructed by your parents that in case the doorbell rings, you have to look through the keyhole. And if it is your father, you can open the door. If it is your mother, you can open the door. If it is your brother or your sister, you can again open the door. But if it is any stranger, you should not open the door. Now, in this case, you are acting as the firewall. Why? Because you have been given a set of rules. What are the rules that have been given to you? Entry to be allowed only for your father, mother, or your siblings. All the other people have to be denied access. This is exactly how a firewall functions. Now, suppose this is the organization where you're working. Now, the firewall is placed between the LAN and the WAN. Now, the rules that will be set for the firewall for blocking any unwanted traffic could be like this. The source and the destination IP address can be specified. Now, this is the branch that we are working. Suppose the organization has a different branch here. Okay. Now, I said that every router has got a unique IP address. So, if this IP address is specified in the firewall, then what the firewall does is only the traffic that is coming from this IP address, the firewall will allow into the system. All the other IP addresses will be blocked. That is one method of blocking any unwanted traffic. That is by specifying the source and the destination IP address. So only the traffic between these two branches can take place. All the other traffic will be blocked. Now, another method of blocking is they could block domain names. Now, what do you mean by domain names? Domain names are facebook.com, instagram.com. So all these are domain names. So if the organization does not want the employees to access Facebook or Insta, then immediately they can make a configuration in the firewall and immediately that will be blocked. You will be denied access. Likewise, applications like online games, Netflix, everything can be configured within the firewall. So basically, applications, domain names, IP addresses are various methods in which the unauthorized traffic is blocked by way of firewall. Now, this firewall can either be a hardware or a software. It could either be a hardware, a separate hardware which is placed between the router and the WAN, or the firewall could be embedded in the router. The router could also have firewall features, or the firewall can be a software. The firewall software is usually placed within the central server so as to restrict any unauthorized traffic. So in short, firewall is either a hardware or a software which is used to prevent unauthorized traffic. Now we will read that sentence once again. Firewall is a network security system, agreed, based on predetermined security rules, agreed. Security rules will be based on whether to block certain IP addresses, whether to block certain applications or programs, and which acts as a barrier between an internal network, that is usually the LAN, and the public network, that is the internet, to protect from potential cyber threats. So I hope the concept of firewall is clear. Now let's see what are the advantages of an intranet. advantage of intranet is improves communication. Now, what do you mean by intranet? All the branches of any organization are getting connected. That is the meaning of intranet. So definitely it will improve communication. It improves the head office branch and also the inter-branch communications. And what is the benefit? It facilitates automated stock requests from branches. Now, whenever we are linked, the stock request can be automated. We don't need to call, we don't need to send an email. And inter-branch transfers of stocks. Now, whenever the branches are linked, we can see whether there is any excess stock in that other branch. So if we have a shortage, then we can ask that branch to transfer so much of stock. Or even in case of cash shortage, we can ask that branch to transfer the funds. So basically, because of the intranet, the communication is improved within the organization, which will facilitate inter-branch transfers, maybe of stocks, maybe of funds, or any other piece of information can be circulated within the organization at a very fast pace. Now, the second advantage is non-paper-based information. Corporate policies and important documents are stored in central repositories. This saves printing and distributing cost. Now, if it was not for the intranet, we would have to print all these documents and we would have to circulate it to the branches. So that is saved. Timely decision making. Now, with the intranet, real-time information is available because there is interlinking of all the branches. So definitely the decision making will also be improved. Remote access. Cloud-based intranets. What do you mean by cloud-based intranets? These are hosted on remote servers. That is, it is not within the organization. It is hosted on remote servers and hence it can be accessed from anywhere via the internet. Now, a quick method of recollecting the advantages of intranet is the word intra. I-N-T-R-A. So that's it about intranet. Now let's move on to the next network, namely Extranet. Extranet is a private, secure extension of an intranet. It allows authorized people like customers, suppliers to access certain parts of the internal network. Now, what did we learn about intranet? Intranet was available only to the employees of the organization. Now, extranet, what they say is, it is an extension of the intranet. And a part of the intranet is available to authorized people like customers and suppliers. Now, whenever you do an online banking transaction, you are working in the extranet because you are a customer of the bank and you are given access to certain parts of the internal network. So online banking is an example of extranet. Here again, extranet is also secured by access controls. Now, whenever we do an online banking transactions, we've got login credentials, right? And these login credentials are encrypted. When we key in our username and password, the data is getting encrypted. Any intermediary in between, like the internet service provider, they also cannot see our login credentials because the entire data gets encrypted. And definitely, there are firewalls for the extranet as well. That is, certain applications, programs, or IP addresses will be blocked by the firewall. So now we have seen the various networks through which the information flow takes place. But this information is generated from the data that is entered into the system. So let's look into the input devices that are used for entering the data into the system. Now, the input devices can be grouped into two. One is the keyboard, that is, the data is getting manually entered, or there is the direct data capture methods. Now, the first method of direct data capture is the optical mark recognition, or the OMR. This is used to mark and evaluate multiple choice questions. So, you know, an OMR sheet wherein you will be given multiple choice questions and you have to bubble the right answer. So it can be used for processing questionnaires. Now, in the business field, you could give questionnaires to the customers to get their feedback. So basically, whenever we use an OMR sheet, there is no question of entering the details that is available from the customers or from market analysis. It is a direct data capture method. Now, the second method is the optical character recognition, OCR, or it is also known as the image to text applications. Now, you people might be familiar with optical character recognition as well. When do we use it? Now, suppose if your teacher tells you to make a PowerPoint presentation from a topic which is given in the textbook. So the textbook is a printed matter. So the option that was available earlier was you have to read the textbook and then you have to key in all the data to make the PowerPoint presentation. But now it is very easy. Now we can use Adobe Scan. So example is Adobe Scan, which is a mobile application designed to scan documents using a smartphone's camera. So what you can do is you can download the Adobe Scan and then you can scan the page from the textbook. So what happens once the document is scanned, Adobe Scan employs OCR technology to convert it into editable format, typically a PDF. So what you can do is you can use Adobe Scan and you can get an editable PDF file. Then all that you have to do is you have to copy and paste. Just like that, in a business, you can transfer all its printed documents to PDF files using OCR technology and thereby eliminating the manual input. Now, for business, they might have so many legal documents, and if they get a legal document and if they want to edit it, so since the printed document, earlier they should take the effort of manually keying in the entire legal document. But now it is very easy because of OCR technology. They can scan and get it in editable PDF format. So the manual effort is reduced. Now, the next data capture method is magnetic ink character recognition, or MICR. This is used mainly to clear bank checks. Now, all of you have seen a bank check and you would have noticed certain numbers in certain funny fonts. I will show you. So these are the fonts that are written in magnetic ink. And if you see here, this is the MICR code. And you know what that code indicates? This is the number which indicates which is the bank and which is the branch of that bank. So it is very easy to clear the checks. Pass the checks through an MICR reader and it will immediately identify the bank branch to which this account number belongs to. So clearing of checks will be very easy. MICR readers can easily find out which branch the check belongs to, which automates the check clearing process, and it is highly reliable and secure. Now, this is magnetic ink. Even if there are smudges or even if you overwrite, even then the MICR reader will pick up the magnetic ink correctly. And it is very difficult to duplicate this magnetic ink. That is why it is considered as very reliable and secure. Now, the next method of direct data capture is barcodes. Barcodes, you all know, whenever you go to a supermarket and buy products, in the counter, they scan the barcode. They are not entering which product is being sold manually, right? Barcodes is also a method of direct data capture. The next method is magnetic strip or chip cards. It is used to withdraw money at ATMs and to pay goods by credit cards. These are secured through PIN numbers. So you all might have a debit card or a credit card. Now you have the magnetic stripe here, and there is also the chip in which the account details of the owner is embedded. Now this chip always generates a unique transaction code whenever a transaction is done. Because of the presence of this chip, it is very difficult to clone this card. Now in India, this chip card is compulsory. We do not have the magnetic stripe cards alone. So that's it about the various data capture methods. Now we will move on to see what are the security controls that are usually undertaken at the time of input, processing, and output. So we will first look into the input controls. Now, what do you mean by input controls? Those controls that are employed to ensure that the input of data is complete and accurate. So the first input control is range test. Example, the month should be in the range of 1 to 12. If you key in 13, then the system will not accept it. Format checks. Example, the date format check. That is in the format of month, day, and year. Next is a check digit. Example, the check digit used in barcodes. Now, in the barcode, the last number is the check digit. And this check digit, it's not some random number. It is based on complex calculations of the preceding numbers, which means that each time the barcode is scanned, only if the result tallies with the check digit, the computer will accept the scanned data. Say if the barcode is turned and this number 6 is not visible. So when the scanning is done, the calculation will not tally with the check digit. So immediately the computer will prompt that the scanning is not accurate. So they will have to again spread the barcode and they will have to again scan. So that's an input control. Next is the sequence check. Example, the software automatically suggests the next check number based on the last entered check number. So this will prevent omission of data. Now, if we have issued check number 1 and we have entered that in the system, and next, if we enter check number 3, then immediately the system will prompt, where is check number 2? And only if it is cancelled, we will have to manually correct it. So that is an internal control check that is available in the system to prevent omission of data. Now moving to the next, it is control totals. Example, total hours worked as shown in Excel timesheets are keyed in as a control total before payroll processing. Suppose if in the Excel timesheets, the total hours worked by the laborers is 100 hours. So definitely the payment also has to be made for 100 hours. So in case there is a keying in error and say the number of hours keyed into the system is say 110 hours, then immediately, because the control total of 100 hours has been entered in the system initially, the system will prompt that there is an error. So this is yet another input control security. Now let's move on to the processing controls. So in processing controls, you have passwords. That is, any employee cannot process the data. Only authorized people can process the data and they will have a user ID and password. So this is a processing control mechanism. Software audit trails. Now the software audit trail is a log of events within a software system that gives information about the users responsible for each action, the date and the time of action. So if you make a change to the data, then immediately the system will record who and at what time changed the data. So it is very easy to check who has caused the damage to the data. Now moving on to the output controls. Output controls, again, you have passwords. That is, any random employee cannot check the output results. You cannot check the profits of the company. The access rights to all the output reports are protected by passwords. Distribution list. Only authorized individuals listed on the distribution list should have access to the sensitive printed output. So whenever there is a list of people who are mentioned, then the output will be given only to those people and not to anyone else. Physical controls. Sensitive printed documents should be stored in locked cabinets or restricted access rooms. So this is basically, you have to keep it under lock and key. Now let's move on to certain other controls which are employed in any organization for data security. Now the other controls includes firewalls and data encryption. Now these two items I've already explained, so I'm not repeating it. Now the third type of control is antivirus software. It's self-explanatory. Any software that protects the organization from virus attacks. The next one is archiving facility. Infrequently accessed data held on the system can be transferred to offline storage, which will make the system quicker. Moving on to the next, personal controls. Includes segregation of duties. Why should you segregate the duties? Now, the fraud case of Aman Shah, or the 1 cent thief, is a classic example of where the organization did not follow the segregation of duties. Now, one of the main points in segregation of duties is the programmers should not have access to the live data, because if the programmers have access to the live data of the customers, then they can make a program and they can steal the money. So this is what happened here. Now, Aman Shah was working in a bank in Malaysia. He was part of the finance team, which means that he had access to the live data of customers. Together with that, the organization gave him a digital training program, and this triggered all the problem. What he did was he took negligible amounts of money from each customer's account. Since the amounts were so negligible, none of the customers complained. Because in your account, if you find a debit in your bank statement, say of $0.01, then you would just presume that it is bank charges. You wouldn't make a complaint to the bank, right? So that was what happened in Aman Shah's case also. None of the customers complained, and he amassed a fortune of more than 4 million ringgit. Ringgit is a currency of Malaysia. If it was not for his luxurious lifestyle, none of the people would have suspected this fraud. So in short, the people who are handling the live data should not have access to any programs or codes, or they should not be allowed to tamper with the system. Now, this fraud is known by the name salami slicing, simply because just like salami is sliced in thin slices, the theft is also being done in thin slices, or tiny bits of amount is being stolen from each customer. In order to prevent fraudulent activities, it is of utmost importance to segregate the duties. That is, the people who are handling the live data should not have access to the programs, or they should not have knowledge to tamper with the programs. Hierarchy of access. That is, a hierarchy of access should be clearly specified. That is, certain critical information like the profits of the organization should be accessible only to the top management. Moving to the next, backup in a different geographical location. So in case of fire or natural disasters, our files will be safe. So that's it about the topic managing information. Stay tuned for the recap ahead.